Mali proved unusually communicative from across the seas, and although at times he sounded brusque, disconnected, or impersonal, he generalized a good deal about the civilization in which he found himself. Now there's something amazing. There's something is changing here. When Bali was at home, he was quite opposite of this characteristic, or quite opposite of this behavior, right? Mali is not communicative. Mali didn't speak more than one or two syllables sometimes just to answer the father, even, right? So there was this conversation barrier between the father and son. Now, when Mali is in America, seems things have changed, right? We'll find out whether what's going on later on. But for the moment, we find like Mali is writing, Mali is speaking. I mean, like Mali is telling too much. Not too much. Actually, he's changed. I mean, like Mali proved unusually communicative. Means Mali is writing now. Mali is sending letters, right? Unusually communicative from across the seas, from America. And although at times he sounded brusque, as sometimes Mali is brusque. These letters are brusque, means very short and kind of rude sometimes, right? Brusque means that not rude. Actually, here the idea is that they are not lengthy; they are short and kind of rough, right? Brusque, disconnected, and impersonal. I mean, like he's not telling about his own feelings instead, but it seems like these letters are explaining a lot of about American civilization and American surroundings and things, but not Mali's personal feelings, right? That's what you mean the word disconnected here, and impersonal. I mean, like impersonal, no emotions are expressed in these letters, right? So, impersonal, he generalized a good deal about the civilization in which he found himself. I mean, like Mali has explained in these letters a lot about America and its social surroundings, socio-cultural, economic background, right? The blue airmail letters grew into a file now. Letters are coming one by one, one by one, one by one. I mean, like he's really. I mean, Jagan is receiving a bunch of letters now, so he cannot just keep on these letters. So he has to just file them. So he has filed these blue airmail letters, these special letters from Mali, into a file, right? If only Mali had taken the precaution of leaving a proper margin to his epistles, Jagan would have bound them into a neat little volume at the truth printing. Surely Nataraj would have realized the importance and obliged him with the speedy execution. I mean, like, so the idea here is if only Mali had taken the precaution, if Mali was cautious, precautions means if Mali was having considerate about leaving some space in his blue letters. I mean, like in his letters. I mean, like in his letters, there was a problem. The problem was there was no space. I mean, like in your copybooks, you have a space, right? You in the left hand corner. I mean, like left side. Normally, you have a kind of a horizontal line from top to bottom, right? So that is there just to leave space. So when you are starting a sentence, you have space. But here the problem is in these letters there was not such a space. So it was like, imagine in your book you are writing without this line. So you are starting from the very end of the book to the very end of the page to the other end of the page. So the whole letter is filled, right? So there's no space, there's no margin, in other words, right? So if Mali has left a margin, in other words, if he had taken the precaution of leaving a proper margin to his epistles, means his letters, epistles is another word for letters, Jagan would have bound them into a neat little volume at truth printing. I mean, like Jagan would have made a book out of it, right? Another book. Apart from his nature cure, he would just print out a different book out of Mali's letters, because it tells a lot about America according to Jagan, right? So it's like about life in America. He can just title that book. It doesn't say something like that. I'm just adding things, right? Okay. Jagan would have bound them into a neat little volume at the truth printing. Surely Nataraj would have realized the importance. I mean, Nataraj has definitely will understand the importance of such letters, such significance. I mean, like new information from America, right? About the life in America. And Nataraj would print this book and oblige him with speedy execution. Nataraj would understand this situation and he would just immediately print this book, right? Execution means complete a task is called execution. Execution has so many other meanings as well. Forget those for the moment. Execution here means completing, or just in case this here, it is like printing the book, right, and finishing it. Jagan stuffed his jibba pocket with the letters. I know, you know now, right? What is the jibba and what is the dhoti, right? What part of the costume is dhoti and what is the jibba, right? So he's stuffing his jibba pocket with the letters, right? So he's this top part, top costume, right? Jibba pocket with his letters. Normally, dhotis don't have. Some dhotis have pockets, but normally dhotis are immune to pockets, right? So anyway, Jibba pocket with letters and pulled out from for choice reading passages of all and sundry, mostly to his cousin who has ever remained an uncomplaining listener. But now Jagan has developed another habit. His habits are changed right now. Now what he does is sometimes he's taking these letters right out of his pocket and reading them, especially to the cousin, right? Certain passages, not everything, but certain parts from those letters, he's taking out of his deeper pocket and just reading them, right? Uh, and passages to all and sundry. Passages to all and sundry means everyone. I mean, like he's not differentiating sometimes, right? Mostly, if he knows someone, he's willing to just to read a passage, just to read some lines from Mali's letters, right? Gradually, his reading of the Bhagavad Gita was replaced by the blue Yamel letters. I mean, like Jagan, from the very beginning, we knew, right? He was reading the Bhagavad Gita, right? Just like a Catholic would just always refer to the Bible. I mean, like Jagan had this habit of just referring to the Bhagavad Gita always. Now that habit is taken, replaced by this habit, new habit Jagan has developed, reading from his son's letters. Now, this is the kind of new religion for him. This is the kind of new fashion for him, right? Jagan is reading from his son's letters. What is he reading about America? Life about America, right? From his study, he formed a picture of America and was able to speak with authority on the subject of American landscape, culture, and civilization. From these letters, he tended to know lots about America and lots about American life. I mean, like for Jagan, this is a lot of education about this new country and new life, right? Previously, can you remember what was in Jagan's mind about America, where people were drinking lots of alcohol and where people were eating beef, and people are not drinking bread, I mean like milk or water, they are drinking alcohol and they are eating meat. Those are the things that were stuck in their head about America, right? Even Cousin had kind of stupid ideas, right? Can you remember that women were kind of almost naked and they're basking in the sun? Can you remember those things, right? I mean, like those are kind of false ideas they had so far. But now is for the first time he's getting a picture of America. Oh my God, America is a different country rather than we thought of America, how America was, right? This is we are speaking about the 1960s, right? Nowadays it's very easy. You have Google, but Jagan didn't have Google. Nowadays you have YouTube. You can just type American life. There are like 1,000 videos will appear, so you can easily understand about that socio-cultural background, a little bit of information, second-hand information, right? You don't have to live there, but at least you can get an idea. But now in Jagan's days, things were quite difficult, kind of different. You have to understand the context. So here, this information about America comes as a second-hand resource from these letters. So Jagan read these things and he feel like, I know how the life of America other than any person in Malgudi. So if I can explain these guys about American life from the information I have from my son, right? That's the idea here. And he can speak about the landscape. You know what is a landscape? The how landscape means, it's a broad word, it's a big word. It means like how the buildings are structured, how the roads are structured, where the public parks. It's the overall picture of the land, right? It's in other words like land planning, right? Yes, we'll understand like that, right? He hardly noticed to whom he spoke. I mean, like at this point, Jagan hardly noticed. I mean, Jagan even didn't know really to whom he is speaking to, right? He hardly noticed to whom he spoke. Anyone on the road seemed good enough, Like anyone who's prepared, who had ears, is good enough for Jagan, for him to speak about America. I told you, right? He's suffering now from kind of a fervid, kind of a craze, kind of a obsession, right? This obsession, sometimes people have these obsessions. Like you may laugh at it, you may say, like, seriously, are there people like that? Yeah, people have obsessions, right? Some people have obsessions. Now you may laughing at this, like this is very improbable, sir. No people person just go and talk to other people, right, about their life, about American life. Is this practical? At that time, in this Malgudi, in this village, this could happen, right? I mean, like, there's no doubt. I trust this, right? I have seen people, they have this obsession. Sometimes some people have this obsession just to clean their hands always, right? So what they do is, like, they can't stay like 5 or 10 minutes in a place because they feel like their hands are filled with germs. So they, what they have to do is they have to rush to the I mean, like the tap, right, faucets, and wash, clean their hands. They put they apply some kind of a detergent or some kind of a germ killer or some kind of a soap, right? And this always clean their hands to make sure their hands are germ free. They do it constantly, as it's like in a compulsion, as if someone is forcing inside their heads to do it constantly. Be clean, be clean, be clean. So because they are hearing that voice inside them, they can't stay in one place at long and concentrate. They are always going to clean their hands, right? That's called a kind of a obsessive compulsive disorder, right? So when people have this, some people have this. So in another way, here it's not Jagan is cleaning hands, but simply he want to speak, he want to talk, he want to talk about America to anyone, any person who passed by, right? So he hardly noticed to whom he spoke. Anyone on the road seemed good enough. His acquaintances feared, I mean, like people who knew him feared that he was afflicted, means he was sick. He has caught up with a talking disease. I mean, like he want to talk, right? So he was suffering from a disease. He's suffering from some kind of a special disease of talking disease, right? That's what he thinks, right? From the minute he stepped out of his house, he scanned the landscape for a familiar face, pounced hawk-like on the unwary victim and held him in his thrall. Right. So from the minute he came out of his house just to walk to the shop, he scanned the landscape, means he carefully looked around where he's passing just to find out familiar faces, right? Is there anyone today, any new face today that I can stop and talk to him about America, right? Any landscape or a familiar face. Pounce means jumped. This is like pouncing means, eagles pounce, or hawks. Hawks, kind of like eagle like birds, right? They jump, they from the sky, they come down, right? Stoop very fast and pounce on the prey. I mean, like they jump on the prey, just like tigers are pouncing, right? On a hawk like, it's like an eagle like. On a unwary victim means, unwary means he has no idea, right? Jagan is coming to him suddenly from nowhere, right? Just like a hawk, just like an eagle, just jumping on a unwary means unprepared fish or unprepared snake, right? Just to catch him. Jagan also same way, just jump into an unprepared or unwary person to talk about these things, right? Unvictim, held him in his thrall means held him in his grasp, held this person in Jagan's presence, right? Even stopped the vagrant on the culvert. I mean, the victims, I mean, the people Jagan speaks always differs, right? He can speak to the lawyer, he can speak to the chemist, he's speaking to Nataraj, he's speaking to the other numerous people, he's speaking to the one-tooth lawyer, can you remember? And now he's speaking even to the vagrant in the culvert. All this time, Jagan hated the the vagrant in the culvert, right? And now you know who's a vagrant, right? I told you, he's like a beggar. And the culvert, can you remember the word culvert? is a kind of a totally enclosed drain, right? So in this drain, near this drain, the culvert is near the culvert, the vagrant is living. And one day, Jagan, in order to describe the Grand Canyon, I mean, like he stopped, Jagan stopped near the vagrant to explain him the Grand Canyon. I mean, like, you know what is a Grand? If you don't know what is a Grand Canyon, Grand Canyon is the biggest kind of a canyon in the world. It's in America, right? Uh, it's a huge canyon. Like what? That's why we call it grand. Grand. The idea word grand means is big. It's one of its kind. So if you can Google these things, right? It's good. You can get the picture. It's this kind of a rocky kind of a structure, but still it's very steep and it goes down, right? Way down, and that's why we call it canyon. I can't recall the particular Sinhalese name for that. සිංහලෙන් කියන්නේ කොහොමද canyon එකක් කියන්නේ ඒක නිකන් පාතාලයක් වගේ එකක්. ඒ කියන්නේ I mean like it's a very beautiful scene, but at the same time it's a scary scene. You see these rocks, right? Layers of rocks that goes from I mean like in the both sides there are rocks, right? In the middle there is this empty space, right? That's called a canyon. And something about some geographical importance of this Grand Canyon is, you know, when we walk on the earth, we only see the recent sand, we only see the recent stone structures, right? Even we dig a hole, we only see the stones and, you know, whatever the rocks that were formed in a relatively close period, maybe like 1,000 years, maybe like 2,000 years. But when you go to the Grand Canyon, if you just inspect the layers of these stones, right, you can easily see because it's exposed, right? You see the structures and layers in the Grand Canyon. Google it. I strongly advise just Google it. You have to see these things in your own eyes, right? If you don't know what's Grand Canyon. So I'm adding some information. I mean, like when you look to the layer, I mean, a rock structure of Grand Canyon, in the top you can see like relatively, I mean, like young rocks, and when you go to the bottom of the structure, I mean those rocks are older, like millions and millions and millions years, right? They are older. So Grand Canyon provides kind of a geographical importance, kind of a structural importance as well for people who want to study the rock formation. It provides ample evidence for that, as well as it's a very beautiful site that people like to once in a while visit, right? Because that site, that spectacle is a mind-blowing spectacle, one kind of a very beautiful site to be visited, right? Just like Himalayas, right? That icy kind of a very beautiful peak mountain. The same way, Grand Canyon or the Mariana Trench are very distinctive icons, very distinctive places on this earth. So just do the research on behalf of this. Just pause this video for a while. Just Google it if you have the internet connection and find out what is the Grand Canyon, right? All right. Now Jagan stops to describe this Grand Canyon to the beggar, right? To the vagrant. Actually, there is nothing like it anywhere in the world, Jagan says to the beggar, right? He concluded and gave him a first paisa, gave 5 paisa for listening. Now Jagan explained this in detail, right? And gave some money to the beggar, right? Why? For he was listening without asking any question, right? So in other words, what you see is like this guy want to talk to whoever, right? දැන් සමහරවිට තියෙනනේ මේ අපි කියනවා මේ අර ඡන්ද කාලෙට අපේ රටෙත් ඉන්නවා Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson is a well-known boxer, right? He's the Iron Man in boxing. That's different. That's not the American Mike Tyson. අපේ රටෙත් ඉන්නවා දේශපාලඥයෝ Mike Tyson ලා වගේ කට්ටිය. ඒ කියන්නේ යාළුවට මොකද්ද? ඒ ඡන්ද කාලෙට පුදුම උණක් එනවා ඔළුවට. මයික් එකක් පේන්න බෑ. දේශපාලනේ කතා කරනවා. සෙනග ඉන්නවද නැද්ද ස්ටේජ් එකේ බලන් ඉන්නවද නැද්ද අදාළ නැහැ මයික් එකක් දැක්කොත් කතා කරන්න ඕනේ. කතා කරේ නැත්තම් නිකන් නිින්ද යන්නේ නැහැ. කතා කරේ නැත්තම් නිකන් මොකද්ද නිකන් ලොකු අවුලක් තියනවා වගේ. අන්න ඒ වගේ මයික් ටයිසන් කෙනෙක් වෙලා දැන් Jagan, right? So you get the idea how obsessive he is. Like that, I explain you what is the kind of compulsive obsession is, right? So just imagine this thing is he want to speak to anyone, and if this person is listening, he's happy. In this case, he's a beggar. He didn't ask question. He gave some 5 paisa to that beggar for listening, the vagrant for listening, right? It was a matter of luck for another whether he could slip away in time or got entangled in the American law. I mean, it's a matter of luck for another. I mean, like, if someone escaped this, that's good for you, right? You can imagine you are in the Malgudi, right? And you see Jagan, what would you do? If Jagan sees you, he'll stop for you definitely, and talk about America with you. So it's a matter of luck for you just to be out of his way, right? In a palataka in හොඳ නැහැ. එන හුලඟ වදින තැනක හිටියොත් අනාතයි, right? අන්න ඒකයි මේ කියන්නේ. ඒ කොන්න කෝච්චියක් එනවා දුවපල්ලා කියලා තමයි මේ that's the idea, right? අහු වුණොත් මල වාතේ, right? That's the idea, right? It was a matter of fact for another whether he could slip away in time or got entangled in American law. If he just escaped this guy, good for him. If not, be captured, just like become a victim for a hawk, right? He had to listen to American law. What do you mean by law? L-O-R-E, law. American tales, American stories. We tell folk law. L-O-R-E, law means folk tales, folk stories. The law means stories. So he has to hear the American stories if Jagan see any person, right? In other words, I have explained you the situation. Jagan found everyone restless when he spoke, but he rushed through his narration breathlessly. And Jagan later on just noticed, like, everyone is restless. Everyone is a kind of restless, unsettled when Jagan is talking. I mean, like, they want to go, right? They don't want to hear this garbage, this crappy kind of shitty talk about America. They have other work to do. මේ මොන මනස් ගාතක්ද මේක මේ ඇමරිකාව ගැන කතා කරනවා මලවාතේ මෙතනින් යන්න තමයි මිනිස්සුන්ගේ ඔළුවේ තියෙන්නේ. But that's why they feel restless. But anyway, Jagan doesn't pay any attention for that. Jagan instead speed up like a rapper singing a rap song. Jagan immediately tell about this American things, right? His narration and breathlessly, without stopping, without like I'm sometimes reading, right? Without breathlessly, I'm doing this thing and immediately speaking, right? He had the feeling of having to bottle up his ideas until a blessed hour that brought his cousin in. I mean, like in other ways, when he didn't know, he didn't find anyone to speak to, he had to bottle up. It's a good word to understand. What is a bottle up? Means he has to keep those ideas about America inside himself, kind of hidden, and kind of bottle up means repressed. Repressed means not open, right? Bottle up means okay, in Sinhala it's like tamange adahas tika tamantama tiyagane tada karagena inna inna wenawa till cousin comes at 4:30 sometimes just to speak, right? Some days he may not find any person to speak about American life, American things, so he wait till cousin comes definitely just to talk about these things, right? Yes, having to bottle up his ideas until the blessed hour, means the happy hour, the good hour comes, brought his cousin in, who displayed such an enthusiasm for American information that Jagan could hardly tell him enough. I mean, like, cousin is prepared to listen. That's the best part of cousin. Cousin never questions. Cousin is not restless. Cousin enjoys when Jagan speaks about American life. Why does cousin enjoy these things? Why cousin tentatively and very attentively listen to American life from Jagan? Because cousin also don't know much about American life. You know, can you remember, right? I explained you what kind of shitty things, what kind of dirty things, what kind of misguided and misled and misconceptions I mean, like what kind of false things Cousin said about America to Jagan. Now, when Jagan speaks about America, Cousin listens to that, right? Cousin is not restless. Cousin wants this information. Why? Maybe he's speaking the same things what he learned from Jagan somewhere else, right? මෙතනින් අහගෙන කියලා තව තැනකට කියනවා ඇති එයාගේ වගේ, right? ඉතින් ඒක හින්දා එයා ආසාවෙන් අහන් ඉන්නවා ඇති, right? The cousin often wanted to see the letters himself, and cousin sometimes insisted, like asked, like, can we see the letter, right? I mean, like, he want to make sure these things are true, right? But Jagan resisted the idea. I mean, like, Jagan doesn't show the letter sometimes. Sometimes, if he wants, he'll show a little bit of the letter, but mostly he keeps those letters very private to him, right? To Jagan, to the father himself. He held them in a sacred trust and would not allow a third person to touch them. There you go. It's like sacred stuff. These letters are like sacred information, like, I mean, like, very valuable things, valuable epistles for Jagan. So he didn't want to share these things with any other third parties, right? Even with Cousin. Even after all, Cousin has done all this help and everything, but still, it's very private stuff for Jagan, right? You know, very private things to Jagan. What? Being in the puja room. Can you remember? It's a very private thing. He doesn't want anyone to be in the puja room when he's in the puja room. There's another very private thing he do, counting the cash. When he's counting the cash, he doesn't want anyone just to listen. I mean, see, watch, or view that thing, right? And here now we find another one. Just these American letters. It's a very private thing for him. He doesn't want to share these things with any other as well, right? Day after day, the cousin collected information on American life and manners and passed them on to his own circle of business. Yeah, that's the reason cousin is listening these things carefully from Jagan, right? මේක මෙතනින් ජේගන්ගෙන් හිමීට අහගෙන ඉඳලා ගිහිල්ලා එයාගේ යාළුවොත් එක්ක මිනිහා ඇමරිකාව ගැන දන්නවා වගේ, right? Lorry talk දෙනවා, ලොකු talk දෙනවා ඇති, right? Just like in all circle of listeners, he's speaking about America, right? This is why cousin is very attentive, right? Now you know the reason, right? Very soon, most people in Malgudi knew that 50,000 human lives were lost in road accidents every year. I mean, like, from mouth to mouth, this information has traveled in the entire Malgudi. In America, like 50,000 people die each year because of road accidents. You know, right? I mean, like, there are so many vehicles. We came to know that in the very first letter, right? There are many vehicles, many cars in the road, right? So what is the byproduct of that? What is the result of that? There are many road accidents, right? People die. The major cause of death in America, it seems at this time, is the road accidents, right? 50,000 human lives. I mean, like, 365 days, 50,000. Divide 50,000 from 365, you'll find, like, how many deaths per day. See the significance of this, right? Even in Sri Lanka, we are not talking about road accidents, but even in Sri Lanka, it's the same. Like, we have a lot of vehicles in the road, but the major cause of death may be not the cancer. You go to the cancer hospital, not that much people die because of compared to the people who's dying on road accidents or kidney diseases. These are major causes of death in Sri Lanka at the moment, right? I mean, like cancers, kidney diseases, and other, maybe corona, this plague, right? People dying. But don't underestimate the road accidents. How many motorcyclists, how many people get injured or just get hurt because of road accidents is very underrated and very underestimated. Actually, is a matter of fact, is a main killer in our country as well at this moment, right? So now suddenly Malgudi people know people are dying from road accidents, like 50,000 people in America each year, and how people broke down on hearing the death of Kennedy as the street corners and crowded around anyone with the transistor radio. And now they came to know about another fact about JF Kennedy's death. I mean, JF Kennedy is a very popular American president, as well as when he was traveling, he was shot, right? And as a matter of fact, I mean, like, this is a very fascinating story. It's a very fascinating character. He's a very handsome person. As like American ladies those days just loved JF Kennedy. He's a very good, I mean, like, a very talented statesman, a good politician. He had a charisma, he had a flair, and he had a very appealing looks, right? He had the looks in 19 in this time, right? He's like almost like a movie actor, right? Nowadays we have that Imran Khan in Pakistan, right? He was in his young days, he was a cricketer, right? But he's a handsome person too. I mean, like compared to Imran Khan, I mean, like I still like, yeah, even like as a man, I like JF Kennedy, right? So imagine the females, right? How much females maybe loved JF Kennedy at that time, John Kennedy at that time, right? Uh, so now people came to know about this Kennedy's death, right? Malgudi people also now know about Kennedy's death, right? And the street corners and crowded around anyone with the transistor radio, and how people were responding to the Kennedy's death, having transistor radios at that time in close to their ears, and mourning the death. Those days, like it's not like nowadays. They don't have this like mobile phones, or just these laptops, or this kind of TV channels. This you find this Al Jazeera, CNN, like BBC, things like that. It's little distant, it's little remote. It was kind of ice age, right, compared to the technology. So people were carrying radios and things just to listen these things. This, but anyway, the people, America was shocked. Actually, this George F. Kennedy's John F. Kennedy's death, shocked the roots of America. It was a cultural shock as well, right? Not a cultural shock. Actually, it's a trauma, right? Trauma. And so now Malgudi people even know about these things, right? Jagan felt quite competent to describe. Now Jagan also knew a lot about these things, right? And he's competent. He felt confident. He felt he know things just to explain this to anyone, right? Competent to describe as if he watched it himself. The route of Kennedy's motorcade on that fateful day. I mean, like. ජේගන්ට දැන් මේක විස්තර කරන්න පුළුවන් ජේගන් දෙක බලන් හිටියා වගේ දැන් ජේගන්ට කට්ටියට කියන්න පුළුවන්. පන්න පිහිටවලා කියන්න පුළුවන්. හරියට ජේගන් කෙනෙකුට වෙඩි තියනවා ඇස් දෙකෙන් දැක්ක වගේ මල්ගුඩි ඉන්න ඕනේ කෙනෙකුට විස්තර කරන්න ජේගන්ට පුළුවන්. මොකද he was shot in this motorcade. Motorcade is like even you see motorcades nowadays, right? Even when a minister or the prime minister or the president goes on, there are so many other vehicles follows, right? There goes this traffic bikes with all these blinking traffic lights, and then the cars with sirens, and so motorcade is such a thing. But in those days, right, in those days when Kennedy was going on, it was an open hooded vehicle, right? And the people could they clearly see Kennedy and his wife, right, on the motor car. So it was not covered. It was not. Like there was no bodyguards beside. They were just traveling openly in an open hooded car in a street, and that's the time he got shot. And Jagan can say these things as he was standing beside the road, right, and watching these things, like as if he really saw this thing happen. He can explain this thing to people in Malgudi, right? He recounted on how that very morning in Dallas, Kennedy had mingled in the enormous crowds. I mean, Kennedy just went into these crowds with his motor car. You can imagine this thing, right? Kennedy is traveling in the motor car. In this side of the road, there are people watching Kennedy, and in the other side of the people are watching Kennedy. People are filled, people are packed, people are jam-packed, because they always like to see their candidate. They always like to see their for president, right? So when Kennedy was traveling, so many people were gathered just to look at him, right? As if the Pope was traveling, right? When Pope came to our country, right? Can remember people are flocking on the both sides of the road and just wanted to see and just to get a glimpse of this important person. Same way when Kennedy was traveling, people gathered, but unfortunately that's how a person who was hiding just shot Kennedy, right? So Kennedy mingled in the enormous crowds, which grabbed and tore his clothes and hair in sheer affection, right? When sometimes Kennedy even came into the crowds, right? Just mingle with the crowd. Sometimes maybe he's stopping the car and just, as a matter of fact, walked into people a little bit just to share that moment with people, right? That's what some famous people do, right? And what happened was, like, at this time, something strange happened, right? People grabbed, enormous crowds were there, grabbed and tore his clothes and hair in sheer affection. I mean, like they are tore his clothes and pulled his hair, right? And hair in sheer affection. And you may ask me, like, sir, I don't understand this. Like, are you serious? Like, people are pulling hairs and pulling. I mean, like tearing pieces of shirts just as a sign of affection. මිනිහෙකුට ආදරය වෙනවා මේ මිනිහ ඇඳගෙන ඉන්න ඇඳුම් වලින් කෑලි ගලව ගන්නවද කොණ්ඩෙන් කෑලි කපා ගන්නවද? Are you kidding me? I would ask. I mean, like I explained this thing with a nice explanation, right? When like Shihan Mihiranga, right? I mean, like he was a national sensation at a certain time, right? I mean, like when he was in the superstar thing, he didn't become a superstar, but he was very famous among girls, right? Kello ekala Shihan Mihiranga දැක්කම oh Shihan oh, like I mean, like they are so fascinated because he was handsome, he was good looking, and he has this knack for singing. ඉතින් කොල්ලොන්ට හරි ඉරිසියයි, right? කොල්ලොන්ට ටව් කවුනත් දාටික බඩට යන ගාන කෙල්ල පිස්සුවට ලමුඩ, right? බලංගු කෙල්ලොන්ට අපිට ආදරය කරන්න බැරිද මේ මොන හාල් පාරුවකටද මේ ආදරය? It's like boys are angry a little bit, right? Boys became a little jealous, right? So that's one reason why he lost this superstar thing, because boy is not I mean, like male, it generated a male jealousy, right? When the girls and females were loving this figure so much, what happened to Shihan was when he just in case like goes into a crowd like this, අනේ කෙල්ල පුංචි කතුරු තියාගෙන සිහන්ගේ කොණ්ඩ කෑලි සිහන් දන්නෙත් නෑ ලස්සන කොණ්ඩයක් තිබුණා සිහන්ට එක කොණ්ඩේදී කෑලි අනේ සිහන්ගේ මොකද පිස්සු කෙල්ලෝ කපනවා පිටිපස්සෙන් ඉඳලා ආදිරි වැඩිකමට සිහන්ගේ කොණ්ඩ කෑලි ගලවගෙන කපාගෙන ආරන්නේ සිහන් දන්නෙත් නෑ ඒක කන්නට කොණ්ඩේ වෙන්නේ නෑ කොණ්ඩේ ගිල්ලා, right? The thing is like they are just cutting it off, right? ඒ කියන්නේ පිස්සු වැඩි වුණාම එක එක කෑලි ගලව ගන්න හදනවා, right? කොණ්ඩේ ගලවනවා. ඊට පස්සේ then luckily no one tore Shihan's shirts, right? But in this case it's different. I mean, like in American ladies, American people have torn parts of, I mean, like John F. Kennedy's clothes, right? එකගේ කොණ්ඩෙත් කඩාගෙන ඇඳුම් වලත් කෑලිත් ගලවගෙන, right? So that's kind of a situation, right? It shows like how famous he is, right? John F. Kennedy at that time in America, right? So I mean, like Jagan can explain these things nicely to anyone in Malgudi, right? Someone when I explain these things to my students, ඉතින් සර්ුත් ඔය දැක්ක වගේනේ කියන්නේ, right? Just like no, I mean, like this Shihan's case, like someone told me, right? It's a second-hand information as well, right? So actually it's a real thing, right? So I didn't see anything about Kennedy. I'm just explaining what's in the book, right? So just bear with me, right? The students ask certain things, right, when I teach, so that's why I'm just telling them in advance for you, so you don't ask those kind of questions from me, right? So yes, coming back to the situation, yes, his clothes and in hair in sheer affection. Because of this love, they are taking these parts away from hair parts, and these clothes, some tearing, and it's going on because of love. And nor did he spare his listener any detail of Oswald's death later. I mean, like also Jagan talked about Oswald's death. Now, who is this Oswald, and why is Oswald connected with Kennedy here? Kennedy is an important person. Oswald is a nobody. But what is the significance of Oswald? Lee Harvey Oswald is the U.S. assassin of JFK, means John F. Kennedy, in 1934. I mean, like he was born in 1934 and he died in 1963. So even Jagan can explain about the assassin. Assassin means the person who killed John F. Kennedy, right? So today even we have this JF Kennedy Stadium where the rockets, NASA sent rockets to the space. Is from JF Kennedy this land, right? So he's a very important figure. He's a stalwart in American political history, right? So now Jagan can explain these things with fluency, right? With flair, he can explain to anyone in Malgudi, right? See how advanced Jagan is now, right? All this time he was talking philosophy. Now he's talking about these things, right? The only letter Jagan rigorously suppressed was the only letter. There's one letter he received from Mali. Jagan rigorously suppressed strongly with lot of energy. He suppressed it. He thwarted it. He didn't reveal the contents of that letter. He didn't inform that what is in that letter to anyone. And what was in this letter? Uh, the one which Mali had written after 3 years. Now 3 years has passed since Mali has gone to America, and in the third year, Jagan receives this special letter from his son. 3 years experience of America, and this letter say, I I have taken to eating beef, and I don't think I am any worse for it. Shall we take a highlighter, Puti, and highlight I've taken to eating beef until uh, I am I am any the worse for it. I mean, what does it mean? In the suddenly a letter came saying that Mali has started eating beef, and he says like I am any the worse for it. In other words, what do you mean by I don't think I'm any the worse for it? Means like I don't see nothing wrong in eating beef. As much as Americans are enjoying eating beef, I am enjoying eating beef, is the idea of this statement, of this sentence, right? So there's a problem in Mali eating beef, right? If I am eating beef or you are eating beef, it's not a big deal, right? It's not a big deal. Some Buddhists or some people don't like to have beef in their houses. Still, there's a habit, right? අර කිරි අම්මා කියලා කියන හින්දා මේ මස් කන්න සමහර සිංහල කට්ටිය තාමත් අකමැති. But for me, in case, right, I'm like Mali. I almost eat anything, right? So in that case, right, so steak is something quite tasty and juicy. Steak means like yeah, you can see it. I mean, like I have steak. I have tasted steak. There's an American way of making steaks, right? Steak are in our culture. When we make beef, we cut beef into small parts, right? I mean, like our cut, we are almost chopping beef. අපි අපි හරක් මස් කන්න ගියාම හරක් මස් ලියනවා නිකන් අර පලා ලියනවා වගේ හරක් මස් ලියනවා නිකන් අපේ හරක් මස් කෑයි පුංචි. Americans don't prefer to eat beef like that. They take steaks. Steaks are big fat chunks. Imagine this much a big part of beef, right? This much big part of a beef, and the thickness is this, and it's barbecued inside a metal foil, or just that's how sticks are made. Because I've been associated with some Americans as well. I had this chance just to participate in one of their barbecues, and they have treated me with a piece of steak. And I'll tell you, when I'm visualizing that image right now, my mouth is watering. I mean, it's like bloody tasty, right? Steak is wow. It means like I don't have words to explain it, right? It's perfect, right? So steak is something quite tasty and juicy. Exactly, that's true, right? Very tasty stuff. Steak, right? With all this kind of juicy, means like these oozes and the kind of this kind of a natural thing when when the meat is kind of prepared. This juice comes out from the meat, right? Yeah. My mouth is watering right now, right? Now I want to suggest, why don't you people start eating beef? Mali asked, like, I tasted beef, it's perfect. Like, my question is like, why aren't you guys eating beef? That's my question, right? You should start. All Indians should start eating beef. It will solve the problem of the useless cattle in our country, and we don't have to beg for food from America, right? I mean, like, if people start eating beef in India, right, this problem of food deficiencies, famine sometimes, right? Sometimes India is an agricultural country. There are some droughts sometimes. There are some water shortages. Then people go hungry, right? People don't have food. So the best thing is, like, if people have the habit of eating these cattle, right? People will not, starve. People will not be hungry, right? It's a very good thing. What's wrong with it, right? Ask Mali in his letter, right? So the people will not beg for India will not beg for food from America in these hard times. I sometimes feel ashamed when India asks for American aid, says Mali. I mean, like as a Indian living in America, I see that sometimes India asks aid, like food aid. At that time, we are still speaking about not the current India, right? Current India, the modern India, is a kind of a different, very different story. We are talking about this post-colonial India, somewhere around 1960s, right, where this novel is based. We roughly think about we'll take this time somewhere around 50s, 60s, right, where this economic changes are taking place, taking shape for the first time. Today, India is a very kind of a very different situation, right? So at that time, when India was asking help from America in the hard times, Mali is very unhappy about it, right? He felt ashamed about it. Uh, Instead of that, we why not slaughter useless cows which wander in the streets and block the traffic? I mean, like we can just take off these unnecessary cows in the roads, right? And who block the traffic and kill them. So the cow problem will be, the cattle problem will be solved, right? So the problem is like when people are not eating cattle, cattle population grows, right? If they are in the jungle, actually at least the nature has a way of controlling the population by predators like lions and other tigers can eat these things, so naturally it can balance. But when the cattle are living with humans, but if humans are not consuming cattle, right, if humans are not interfering with cattle life, cattle stocks start to grow, right? So what happens as a result is it start to walk on the roads, it start to walk everywhere, and there's traffic, right? ඒකනේ අපිත් කියන්නේනේ අර තරහ ගියාම කියන්නේ හරක් වගේ පාරේ යන්න එපා කියලා කියන්නේ නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ හරක් පාරේ පනිනකොට it has its own pace. It doesn't care that humans has to stop or humans uh, we are annoying humans. It takes its own way, it takes its own place from a place it wants, it crosses the roads and it doesn't care about us, right? ඒකනේ අපිට තරහ යන්නේ හරක් කියලා කියන්නේ ඒකනේ, right? That's the idea, right? So Man says like that problem will be solved. මේ පාරින් හරක් ටික මරන් කෑවනම් ඒ ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙන traffic උත් නැහැ පාරේ, right? That's the idea, right? Jagan felt outraged by this idea. I mean, from this letter, Jagan is upset and Jagan is annoyed and Jagan is outraged and Jagan is furious. Like he's mad. He's seriously angry. He felt outraged. Underline this line. The Shastras define the 5 deadly sins and the killing of a cow headed the list. Underline. Use a pencil, right? The Shastras define. Shastras are the sacred texts, right? Just like for us, it's like we'll say Tripitaka for Buddhist, for Catholic, like like for other like Islam people, it can be the Holy Quran. For Hindus, it's the Shastras, right? It's like you have the Shastras and Vedas, right? Those are the sacred texts. Shastras define 5 deadly sins. Like the biggest sins, according to these Shastras, there are 5 big sins, and killing cow is the first one, right? How can we understand this? Even we have like 5 deadly sins, right? In Buddhism, we talk about මොකක්ද ඒකට කියන්නේ අර ආනන්තරිය පාප කර්ම කියලා දේවල් තියෙනවානේ. ඒව කරාට පස්සේ මොකද්ද වෙන්නේ? ඒව කරාට පස්සේ මේ ජීවිතය ඇතුලේ මේව ඵල දෙනවා. අනිත් එක තමයි according to Buddhist faith, according to Buddhist belief, you can't find enlightenment easily. I mean, that kind of things block your passage, your way to enlightenment. ඒ කියන්නේ වාට විමුක්තියට යන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඒ මාර්ගය අවහිර වෙනවා මේ deadly sin. It's a kind of a deadly sin in our way, right? ආනන්තරිය පාප කර්ම කියන්නේ අපේ deadly sins, right? Buddhist deadly sins. For the Hindus, it's like Veda says there are 5 other deadly sins, right? So it doesn't specific, but killing the cows is number 1. ඒ කියන්නේ ඒගොල්ලන්ට අනුව හරකෙක් මරනවා කියන්නේ ආනන්තරිය පාප කර්මයක් වගේ වැඩක්, right? You got the idea now, right? So, and that's why imagine Jagan becoming outraged. ඉතින් කොල්ලා හරක් කනවා කියන්නේ හරක් මස් කනවා කියන්නේ තාත්තා හැදෙන්නේ නැති, right? It's like seriously, it's like imagine like if you are doing kind of anantariya papa karma, how your parents will feel, right? I mean, like they'll be shocked. Okay, amme, right? I mean, like imagine the situation, right? That's why he's shocked, right? You have to understand this. So I'm giving this example so you can understand. If I'm telling you this, like killing a cow is the one of the biggest sin, you don't get it, right? I mean, like, how can it be? Right? We are eating even beef, sir. How can it be? Now you know, right, for sure, what it means in the context. So that's why I'm just explaining you the context, because some things make sense when it's put on the right context. It makes a lot of sense, right? So that's important when we are studying literature, to show you these things, right? To compare these things, to show you the parallels. It's That's why these I mean, like these lessons even take time, right? While he was cogitating on how to make his feelings felt on the subjects and collecting the quotations from Shastras and Gandhi's writing on the cow to be incorporated in his letter to Mali. And cogitating means he was thinking about, right? He was planning on how to make his feelings felt. Now, Jagan also wanted to write a reply to this bloody letter that his son has sent him, right? Telling that he's eating beef. He want to say that this is a bad thing, you have to give up this bad thing, and he want to take things from Shastras, and he want to take things from Gandhi's teaching. Can you remember in the very beginning, Jagan didn't even kill, like, to use I mean, like he used the leather, he used the hide from a dead animal just to make his slippers, right? He just make his sandals. That's kind of a person Jagan is, like, right? Now seeing his son doing these things, right, terribly upsets him. You can understand the situation, right? And he's now planning to write a letter taking from Shastras, taking from Gandhi's teachings, right, on the cow, to be incorporated, to be included in his letters to Mali, where there came a cable in the morning. I mean, like at the same morning, a letter, I mean, like a telegram, a kind of a received. Cable here means, what do you mean by cable? Cable is a cable kind of communication from, I mean, like from America, a cable message comes to Malgudi post office, right? So from the Malgudi post office, they are sending a telegram to where Jagan is. That's what a cable. It means a kind of cable telecommunications, right? That's a very fast way of sending messages, right? So here he received a cable uh, saying, uh, there came a cable one morning. This is the message he received from the cable. Arriving home, another person with me. That's it. Very few words. In a cable, you can't write like you write in a letter, right? It's very costly. Very costly. And that's why you have to limit the word count drastically, right? So that's why it's so much reduced and very few lines, right? Arriving home, another person with me. That's it. Now, receiving this cable, Jagan was puzzled. Jagan felt completely out of ease, right? Jagan was puzzled. What sort of a person is coming with my son now? What is this person? He had terrible misgivings. He had terrible misgivings or doubts. He has terrible doubts and added trouble of not being able to talk about this to the cousin. I mean, like, added the trouble of not being able to talk about it to the cousin. Now, all this time he could tell anything to cousin, right? He could converse these things with cousin. Now, he didn't say about Mali's beef eating to cousin before. Other than that, everything else is spoken with cousin, right? And now is receiving a message that Mal is coming with another person, and he can't. Now Jagan felt uncomfortable to tell these things to Kasi, as he might spread the news of another person all over the town. I mean, like, මම අමුත් එක්ක කෙනා කියන එක කසින්ට කිව්වොත් දන්නවා ජේගන් කසින් මේක තනින් තන කියනවා කට්ටියට. Malgudi. Cousin Daddy, right? That's the cousin's character flow. He's a man about the town. He wanders all around the town, and sometimes these things are just jumping out of cousin's mouth, like unintentionally, right? These things just happen to be revealed by cousin, right? So if Jagan told this thing that Mali is coming and there's another person coming with Mali, Kasim will tell this to other people in the town. So everyone knows things in the town, right? Again, Kasim කියන්නේත් නිකන් මේ Reuters පුවත් සේවය වගේ එකක් වෙන්නේ නැති, right? That's why he doesn't want these things to be published, right? His work, yeah. His worst misgivings were confirmed on the afternoon. I mean, like Jagan's worst doubts. I mean, like the worst things that Jagan can ever thought of this other person came to reality, was confirmed on the afternoon when the train dumped Mali. You know, dumped means throwing out, right? Throwing away. You dump your garbage, throwing away. So, literally, in a very poetic way, R.K. Narayan say the train dumped out Mali. The train was traveling, carrying Mali to Malgudi, and Mali got out of the train with his stuff, right? With his belongings and his baggage. The author sees as if the train has dumped out Mali. The train threw Mali out, right, from the train into Malgudi, right? Train dumped Mali. Another person also dumped from the train, right? And an enormous quantity of baggage. Enormous means large quantity of baggage. This, leftovers, bags, suitcases, things like that are called baggage. What remains property of Mali, baggage, on the railway platform and puffed away. The train came, threw out Mali, threw out this other person, threw out the baggage. Actually, it's not throwing out, it's not dumping. They are gradually getting out of the train, right? And the train puffed. Puffing means sending the smoke out, and train went. It means like train has schedules, right? It doesn't stop there forever, right? Puffed away. The very sight of the streamlined trunks, suitcases, corded cartons filled Jagan with uneasiness and feeling of inferiority, right? A streamline, I mean, like this, like regulated kind of trunks, suitcases. Trunks are these kind of big boxes, right? In old days they were using these trunks, right? Nowadays we don't use that word trunks. It's very rare. Now we have like big caskets, right? Plastic boxes and things just to do this thing. So these trunks, suitcases, corded cartons. I mean, like they were coded means some taglines were there attached to it just to verify, clarify some things, right? Coded cartons, storage places are called cartons, filled Jagan with uneasiness and feeling of inferiority. He looked this stuff. He felt like, oh my God, he felt little. Jagan was feeling big, right? Jagan Tikak was a little bit proud all this time. When he saw these things, he felt inferiority. You know what is inferiority complex, right? ආත්මාභිමානයනේ මෙච්චර වෙලා තිබුණේ තමන් විශේෂයි කියලා හිතලා කොල්ලගේ බඩු ටිකයි ආපු එක්කෙනයි another person එයායි දැක්ක ගමන් අනේ හීනමානයක් ඇති වුණා Jagan. In other words, Jagan felt small, Jagan felt little, right? Jagan felt not important in the eyes of these newcomers right now, right? Right? Inferiority. The old porter at the railway station could hardly handle this quantity of baggage, although normally he would seize and carry scores of boxes and baskets without a thought. I mean, even the porter in the railway station was struggling with this amount of baggage, this huge amount of baggage. He has brought lot of stuff from America, right? And this kind of a baggage, even the porter was struggling. For the porter is a very trained man just to, handle baggage. He can handle lot of baggages without any problem. He doesn't make a fuss about it, right? He just naturally, he can move lot of stuff. But even the porter is struggling here shows the size of the baggage Mali has brought from America, right? Imagine that. And even the porter is struggling here. Now he had to call the boy at the cigarette shop for assistance. I mean, like the porter even needed another boy at the cigarette shop near this railway station just to help him. I mean, like lot of stuff, enormous stuff, right, to be handled. Mali kept muttering without moving his head or lips much. I mean, like Mali is just like muttering, right, without moving his head or anything. He's like muttering. Muttering means like whispering things that without being loud. That's muttering, right? Things saying that words are not coming out, but still he's saying, speaking as if he's speaking with himself, right? Lips much. Be careful. And sometimes he says like, be careful. Awful lot of things that might break. I mean, like he's saying sometimes without being loud, be careful with the baggage. There are very breakable things, there are very fragile things, there are very flimsy things inside. Just be careful about handling my baggage, right? They might break. If it's broken, the purpose is useless, right? Uh, have spent a fortune in air freight. I mean, like I spent a lot of money, fortune. I spent a fortune means I have spent enormous money in bringing these things from America in an airplane. That's what we call air freight. Now, freight means, freight, right? You see this in even big ships, cargo ships, you have these cargo freights, right? Freights are big containers that carry things. Freight means that, right? These prime movers and things like carry containers, right? These big trucks carry only two or three containers, two or one, right? Probably. So freight means that. So I have spent a lot of money in carrying those things in air freight. Jagan slipped into the background while this conversation is going on. Jagan slowly went to the background. I mean, like he should be happy, right? His son has arrived right now. අනේ තාත්තා ඉස්සරහට යන්නේ. තාත්තා හෙමින් පස්සට එනවා, right? He's just going into the background. I'm like he's not going to the forefront, right? That's the idea here, right? It's a funny situation, right?